Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I woke up to the smell of sweat. Definitely not hers. It hit me the moment I opened my eyes. A rank, masculine odor hanging in the cool morning air of our bedroom. I thought maybe I was dreaming, or I'd dragged something in on my clothes the night before. But no, it was real, and it was everywhere. On the bedsheets, in the pillow beside me, even lingering near my face. For a second, I just lay there, inhaling it, paralyzed. This was the stink of someone else's body, soaked into the fabric where my wife was supposed to sleep. I pushed myself upright, legs dangling over the side of the bed. My lower back cramped, a familiar ache that had grown worse ever since stress had started gnawing at me. I rested my elbows on my thighs and lowered my head. The smell was stronger that way, and I realized something else. Perfume. A faint trace of her usual scent was hidden underneath, but overshadowed now by that raw tang of another man's sweat. That's when I saw it, the star tattoo on her left shoulder blade, half exposed beneath a twisted bedsheet. She was lying on her side, her back to me. Pale sunlight came through the blinds, illuminating the ink, new and slightly red around the edges. I hadn't noticed it before. We'd never discussed it. Laura sometimes joked about adding another tattoo. She already had a small star on her hip from years ago. But I'd never seen her come home with something fresh. Especially not something so bold and dark on her shoulder like that. I reached out, wanting to brush the edge of that star, see if it was real. But a wave of anger and confusion stopped me. A brand new tattoo. A man's sweaty smell on her side of the bed. My knees started trembling. Old ache flared in the left one. The old sports injury I'd never quite shaken off. The pain seemed to anchor me, reminding me I wasn't lost in some nightmare. This was real life, at its cruelest. I stepped away from the bed, my body throbbing with a dull panic. Usually, I'd greet Laura with a soft kiss if I woke up before her, or at least say something about the morning schedule. Now, words turned sour on my tongue. I didn't wake her. She seemed to be in a deep sleep. The makeup around her eyes was smudged, like she'd come home late, and collapsed without taking it off. The alarm clock on her side read 7:12 a.m. I could see her phone screen lying face down on the nightstand. There was a second, smaller beat behind my ribs, a pulse of betrayal. I tightened my jaw so hard it hurt. Then I walked out, left her there with her brand new tattoo, and that invasive stink that had no place in my home. Outside, the early autumn sky hovered between gray and pale gold. A biting wind moved through the street, pushing fallen leaves in slow, scraping circles on the asphalt. I stood on the porch for a while, my arms crossed against the cold. My breath came out in puffs. I tried to think, but my brain only repeated that nauseating fact. The sweat wasn't hers. That star on her shoulder was new. I grabbed my running shoes. The memory of last night was fuzzy. She'd said she was going out with some girlfriends. Nothing unusual. I'd nodded, half listening, told her to have fun. She left wearing a black sweater and jeans. No mention of a tattoo parlor. No mention of anything. And I'd stayed home, done some reading, gone to bed around midnight. I hadn't even heard her come back. I laced up my shoes, the cold morning air wrapping around me. My knee complained the moment I stepped off the porch and started jogging. But I needed movement. I needed something to numb the surge of emotions. The sidewalk glistened with last night's rain, reflecting the gray clouds overhead. With every step, that pain in my knee spiked. Good, I thought. Let me feel it. Better than the alternative. My chest burning with anxiety and confusion. My name is David. I'm 39. Up until recently, I would have told you I had a decent life. A stable job, a home, a wife. The typical American dream, right? But things had felt off for a while. I just never imagined it would unravel so fast or so violently. I forced myself to push through the run, ignoring how the pounding steps jarred every nerve in my body. Usually, I found solace in these morning jogs. But that day, each stride felt like I was punishing myself. As if, by running harder, I could outrun the pictures forming in my head. Laura with someone else, sweaty limbs tangled in our sheets. I turned at the end of the block. The sky opened up briefly to a slice of sun, and for just a second the day felt crisp, hopeful. Then a gust of wind slapped me across the face, as if telling me, "Wake up, nothing's okay." The sun darted back behind the clouds. By the time I made it home, the pain in my knee had grown fiercer, and I was limping. Fine. The physical ache was something I knew how to handle. The emotional one, I was clueless. The house was silent. Inside, the bedroom door was open, the bed empty. Our comforter was half on the floor. The smell was still there. I swallowed thickly and went to the kitchen. Laura was sitting at the table, both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Her hair was tangled, her eyes puffy. She wore a light gray robe draped off one shoulder. That black star tattoo was obvious now, peeking out from beneath the fabric. My chest tightened. I didn't sit. I stood across from her, letting the tension speak for me. She looked up slowly. "Morning," she whispered. I said nothing. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I might roar. Laura's gaze slid away. I got in late. I nodded, every muscle rigid. "So I see." She let out a shaky breath. I felt like changing up my look. The tattoo. A friend recommended an artist in town. Still, I stood there, my heartbeat climbing. Don't feed me these half-truths. Don't do that. Eventually, my voice scratched out. Whose sweat was on the bed? She jerked her head up, eyes wide. What? I dragged out a chair and sank into it, wincing at my knee. It's a simple question. Who was sweating in our bed? Her hands tightened on the mug. I could see the tremor in her knuckles. I don't know what you're talking about. My gaze snapped to her face. We both know that's a lie. She looked down at the table. Silence. The fridge hummed. Outside, a sudden swirl of leaves scratched at the window. I said, "Where were you last night?" Laura cleared her throat. "I told you. I was with some girlfriends from work." I stared at the new tattoo, the raw redness around it. I recalled how, months ago, she talked about wanting something more fun in her life. You come home with a fresh star on your back. Your clothes stink of another man. So again, where were you? She flushed, mouth parted. I waited. My breath hissed quietly through clenched teeth. "David, it's not what you think." Her voice was trembling, but there was a layer of defiance beneath it. We, my friends and I, went for drinks, then to a club. One of the bartenders recommended a 24-hour tattoo place across the street. I was drunk, I guess. I thought it was spontaneous, a good idea at the time. Her eyes met mine. They were watery but still holding onto that streak of anger, as if I were at fault for questioning her. The mismatch of vulnerability and resentment in her stare stirred something ugly in my gut. "You're lying," I said softly. She swallowed. Then she blurted, "I never meant to hurt you." I felt my entire torso tense. Never meant to hurt me. You brought a man into our bed, or let him near enough that his sweat, his stink, is in the sheets. That's not a casual slip-up, Laura. Her eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth, maybe to deny it, but nothing came out. She set the mug down with a shaky clatter, coffee sloshing over the rim. I clenched my jaw again, the urge to yell rising like bile. Instead, I gave a short nod. "Okay." She blinked. "Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm going to shower. You figure out how to explain it. Then we'll talk." I stood and walked out before she could respond, ignoring the throbbing in my knee. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might tear out of my chest. I forced myself to climb the stairs carefully. Each step was an effort, my body heavy with anger, shame, heartbreak. In the bathroom, I stripped off my sweaty running clothes and stood under the hot water, letting it pummel my tense shoulders. I wanted to cry but felt numb instead. My thoughts churned. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Does he have a name I recognize? Did she moan for him the way she used to for me? Each question fed a new wave of raw fury that built inside me, spiking my pulse higher. I got out, dried off, stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked back, older than I remembered. Lines around the eyes, a tightness in the jaw that never used to be there. Guilt flickered in me. Had I been too caught up in work, too inattentive? But that guilt was swallowed by a fresh surge of anger. Even if I'd made mistakes, none of it justified her betrayal. My knee groaned as I pulled on a pair of jeans and a clean t-shirt. The emotional whiplash was worse than the physical pain. Part of me wanted to charge downstairs and scream at her. Another part wanted to walk away forever. Another part was terrified. Of losing her, of being alone, of facing this new reality where everything I believed in was a lie. Downstairs, the kitchen was empty. The mug was still on the table, cold coffee in it. The smell of coffee grounds mingled with a faint trace of floral perfume. Hers. But that cloying male sweat from earlier had begun to fade, replaced by the sterile odor of cleaning spray. I realized she tried to wipe away the evidence. I found her in the living room, standing at the window, arms wrapped around her waist. She turned when I came in, eyes red. "I'm sorry," she said. I kept my distance. "Tell me the truth." She took a shaky breath. "David, please, I can't." "His name," I said. "Start with that." She pressed her lips together, then blurted, "James. James Roberts." I felt something inside me crack. James Roberts. The name conjured a half-familiar image. A corporate attorney in town. Wealthy, rumored to be unstoppable in the courtroom. Married, I'd heard. Father of 2 kids. I'd never met him personally, but I knew of him. How long? My question came out flat. "Just a few weeks," she whispered. "We met. He gave a presentation to my team at the agency. It was just flirting at first, but we started texting. Then we had a drink. Last night, it got out of control." She swallowed, cheeks flushing. "It was the first time I never planned it." My heart hammered in my ears. "You brought him here?" Her eyes dropped. "I'm so sorry." I gripped the back of the armchair, knuckles whitening. My knee hurt, my back hurt, my heart felt like it was being squeezed by a vice. I wanted to break something. "He's married too, isn't he?" She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I forced in a breath. "So that's it. You had sex with a married man in our bed. Congratulations. You two have a lot in common." She let out a shaky sob. I messed up, David. I swear. I didn't. I love you." I stared. "You love me. So you let a sweaty stranger with a ring on his finger share our sheets." She winced as if I'd slapped her. "I know. It was a mistake. I felt lonely. I felt like you'd been distant." My laugh was bitter, short. "So your solution to loneliness was hooking up with some married hotshot in my house. That's rich." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders trembling. For a moment, pity stirred inside me, but I also felt a violent churn of outrage. The sight of her crying used to break my heart. Now I stood there, not sure if I wanted to comfort her or lash out. Lightning flickered outside, surprising me. A clap of thunder followed, echoing across the darkening sky. The forecast had called for a mild day, but apparently the weather decided otherwise. Rain began spattering the windows, quickly building to a heavy, wind-driven downpour. The living room grew dim. It matched the cold, pounding mess inside me. "I'm going out," I said, turning abruptly. "I need air." She reached out, tried to catch my arm. "Please, talk to me. Don't leave me like this." I pulled away. "You made choices, Laura. You're going to have to live with them. I need time." Without another word, I grabbed my jacket from the hook and stepped outside into the rain. It stung my cheeks and plastered my hair against my forehead. The sidewalk was already slick, water rushing into the gutters. I limped a few steps, forcing myself to breathe. Everything smelled of wet pavement and freshly cut grass. My mind was a tornado of images. The brand new tattoo. The bed, that reek of sweat that wasn't mine. Wasn't hers. My stomach twisted. I ended up driving around aimlessly, the rain hammering the windshield. My phone buzzed once with a text message. I didn't bother to check it. Probably her, or worse, someone from work. The engine's hum was a lifeline in the storm. I drove for hours, stopping only once to grab a stale gas station coffee. Eventually, hunger and exhaustion forced me back home. The storm had passed when I pulled into the driveway, replaced by a cold drizzle. The sky was an endless stretch of gray, as if the sun had given up. I felt about the same way. My knee throbbed after so many hours locked up in the car. I stretched it gingerly before heading inside. Laura wasn't in the living room. No lights were on. The place seemed deserted, but her purse was on the table, so I knew she was home. On the kitchen counter, I noticed she prepared dinner, some pasta congealing in a pot, untouched. My stomach rumbled, but I couldn't summon any appetite. Upstairs, I found her in our bedroom, huddled under the blankets, eyes swollen. The sheets had been changed. The smell was gone, replaced by detergent and the faint tang of bleach. She tried to scrub away the evidence, but that only made the betrayal more vivid in my mind. This woman, whom I'd shared my life with, was now scrubbing our bed clean of another man's residue. We didn't speak. I slid off my jacket and fell onto the couch across the hall in the spare room, the one we sometimes used as an office. I was too wound up to sleep, my body buzzing with leftover adrenaline. Through the window, I watched the drizzle subside, the night sky clearing in patches. Could I forgive her? Could I even begin to trust her again? Sometime late in the night, I drifted off, plagued by half-dreams of them together. I heard moans that weren't my own, felt the burn of that star tattoo under my fingertips, saw flashes of a man's grin in the darkness, sweat-soaked sheets. When morning came, I woke to a stiff back and that old pain in my knee. Something had to give. I got dressed in my running gear, ignoring the exhaustion that weighed on me, and headed out again. Each day that followed felt like I was living on autopilot. I'd go for a punishing run, come back half dead, and avoid speaking more than a sentence or two to her. She tried to beg for forgiveness, but I had nothing to give. My body felt battered. My spirit felt numb. The third evening after I discovered the truth, she tried to corner me in the living room. The air was heavy, clouds looming outside again, a sign more storms were coming. She stood in front of the TV as I flipped channels aimlessly, hoping to drown out my thoughts. "David, please," she said, arms crossing under her chest. I noticed she wore a sweater that covered that tattoo. "We can't keep living like this." I stared at the screen, refusing to answer. My jaw was so tight my teeth ached. She sank onto the arm of the couch. "I'll do anything to fix this. Just tell me how." Slowly, I set the remote down. "How do you fix cheating with a married man in your husband's own bed?" I asked, voice rasping. Her lower lip quivered. "We can talk to a counselor. Try therapy." "You want me to pay someone so you can explain how you let another man sweat all over my pillow?" I stood abruptly, my left knee nearly buckling. I hissed in pain, tears of rage burning in my eyes. "No, I'm done talking." Lightning flashed outside. Thunder rolled. She stood there, helpless, as I limped upstairs. The storm rattled the windows. My head pounded with that same savage drumbeat. She betrayed me. She betrayed me. That night, after she fell asleep, I found myself standing in the hallway, staring at her phone on the charger. I had a twisted urge to check her messages, see how deep this rabbit hole went. I fought the urge. Instead, I went down to my home office, powered on my computer, and searched for the name James Roberts. Page after page of results. He was a partner at a prominent firm downtown, a man with a face that radiated confidence in every professional photo. married to a blonde woman. 2 kids, a boy and a girl. He wore his wedding ring in all the photos. I wondered if he'd taken it off at some point while lying with my wife, or if he'd left it on, letting the metal press into her skin. My fists clenched, my heart hammered. I wanted to confront him. I also wanted to break him. But a different plan started swirling in the back of my mind. A few days later, I found the evidence I needed to confirm the extent of the betrayal. Laura had left her laptop open, and there it was, dozens of emails, texts mirrored to her iCloud. Exchanges with him that ranged from flirty jokes to explicit confessions of what they wanted to do. One, in particular, mentioned our bed, described how exciting it felt. I nearly threw up in my mouth reading it. Rage hollowed me out. I saved the conversation, printed it, and that's when a savage kind of calm descended. No more illusions. I knew the truth. I knew it intimately. And I was done letting her spin lies around me. That evening, I confronted her with the printouts. She burst into tears, tried to tear them from my hands, but I just stared at her in cold silence. When she realized I wasn't shouting, wasn't hitting the walls, she seemed more afraid than ever. "David," she whispered, "I'll do anything. I swear. Let me." I walked away. Into the bedroom, I slid open the closet, grabbed a small suitcase, and tossed in enough clothes for a few nights. My knee throbbed, my hands were trembling, but my mind was clear. I headed for the door. She rushed after me, blocking my path. "No, don't leave. Please." Her voice cracked. Tears streaked her face. I stepped around her. "Relax. I'm not deserting the house. I just need a hotel for the night. You can stay here. Figure out your next move." She clung to my arm. "Don't do this to me. You can't just disappear." I shook her off. "Watch me." Then I walked out. The door shut behind me with a click that felt final. But I knew this was only the beginning of the aftermath. My pulse hammered. Part of me wanted to come back in, throw her out instead, but something held me back. Maybe a shred of decency. Maybe I needed space to plan my steps. Either way, I left her alone in that silent house, surrounded by the mesh she'd created. I checked into a modest hotel on the outskirts of town. Rain battered the windows that night, but I barely noticed. I stared at the ceiling, my heart raw and stinging. My knee ached from the earlier confrontation. Anger lanced through me, followed by a wave of exhaustion. I wanted revenge. I wanted justice. But more than anything, I wanted my dignity back. The next day, I went for my usual run, pain and all. But this time, each kilometer felt like I was naming it after her. Letting my rage burn away piece by piece, I found a strange clarity in that pounding of feet on pavement. 1 step, 2 steps, 1,000. By the time I finished, panting in the parking lot near the hotel, I felt emptier. And that emptiness was something I could handle. I stayed away from home for 4 days. She called, texted, pleaded. I mostly ignored it. Work was a blur. I told my boss I had a family emergency, took some sick days. Then on the 5th day, I returned to the house. Moved through the hallway like a ghost. She was waiting, eyes ringed with exhaustion. I could see she'd been crying nonstop. "David," she said quietly, watching me. I glanced around. "Pack a bag." She tensed. Where am I going?" "You can stay or go. I don't care. But I'm changing the locks. You won't have a key to this place anymore." She stared, lips trembling. "But what about us?" "Us?" My voice was flat. "There is no us right now. I'm giving you space, and I'm giving myself some peace." She let out a shaky breath. "I'll do whatever it takes, David. I'll quit my job. Block his number." I shook my head. "You made your choice. Now live with it." She broke into sobs, but I didn't budge. My face felt carved from stone. After a few more desperate attempts at conversation, she finally stumbled upstairs. I heard her rummaging. I heard muffled crying. Then she came down, a small suitcase at her side. Her cheeks were wet. She paused at the door, gaze flicking to me. I do love you. That never changed. I felt a twist in my gut, but I said nothing. She lingered, as if hoping for a miracle. When I remained silent, she left. I locked the door behind her, then stood there, heart pounding. I'd done it. She was gone. Just me now. And the bed that still felt contaminated, no matter how many times she washed the sheets. I spent the rest of that evening in the silence of the house. No TV, no music. Just me, nursing an ache in my knee and a deeper ache in my chest. At one point, lightning streaked across the sky again, but the storm never fully arrived. Just a drizzle that pattered on the roof, rhythmic and lonely. The next morning, I woke early, determined to tear away the last illusions of our normal life. I replaced the front door lock, tested it, then tested it again. My phone vibrated half a dozen times. Texts from her, maybe from him too, though I hadn't heard from him directly yet. My heart hammered with every buzz. But I refused to change my number. I wanted them to see how I was living. Calm, deliberate, colder than they'd ever known me. A week passed. I developed a routine. Run in the morning, naming each mile after Laura in my head, imagining I was outrunning her betrayal. Shower, handle some minimal tasks for work from my home office, then spend the evenings alone. Anger flared at times, so strong it left me shaking, but I discovered I had a sharper discipline now. She tried to come by once, rang the bell, knocked, even pounded at one point. I stood on the other side of the door, not moving, not answering. My knee ached from a run earlier, but otherwise I was still. She yelled my name, cried. Eventually, I heard her footsteps retreat. When she was gone, I opened the door and laid a small sign outside. No forgiveness. I pinned it to the doormat so she'd see it if she ever came back. Then I went back inside. My heart hammered, but I felt oddly powerful. Late that night, I printed out the photo. One I'd managed to pull from the security camera of a club she and James had visited. There she was, leaning against the bar, his arm around her waist. In the reflection of a half-finished drink, you could see his wedding band glinting. I enlarged that reflection. It was grainy but unmistakable. I pinned the photo to the fridge, right at eye level. A constant reminder that I wasn't imagining things. This had really happened. Next morning, I left the photo on the kitchen table, near a mug of cold coffee I hadn't touched. It was a message to her, if she dared come back in. The sign outside read, "No forgiveness," and the first thing she'd see inside was that damning evidence. Let her understand I wasn't guessing or suspecting. I knew. Time dragged on. My anger pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. Some nights, when sleep refused to come, I'd pace the living room, my knees screaming with each step. I discovered that physical pain almost felt like a relief. Something tangible, a rightful punishment. My phone kept buzzing with her messages, but I rarely answered. I read them, though. I saw her anguish in typed words. "Please, let me in. I'll make this right. I'm so sorry, David. Let me talk to you." I ignored them. On a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang a different tone. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some gut instinct made me pick up. "Hello?" Silence, then a clearing of a throat. A man's voice. David Miller. My teeth clenched. I knew that voice from an interview snippet I'd once watched. James Roberts. Yes. He exhaled. "Look, I wanted to say this to your face, but I can't find you at your office. So phone it is." I stayed quiet. He continued, "I'm sorry for what happened. It was never about hurting you. It got out of hand." My grip on the phone tightened so hard my knuckles popped. Got out of hand. His voice was calm, almost businesslike. "We're both at fault, Laura and I. But it was purely physical, a moment of weakness. I hope we can handle this like adults." I felt my lips curl. Like adults, you say, do your wife and kids know about your adult approach? He paused. Let's not drag them into this. You want to talk man to man, that's fine. But keep my family out of it. A laugh escaped me. What a noble stance from an adulterer. You want to protect them after you used my home as your playground. He inhaled sharply. Look, I regret it. That's all I can say. She was lonely. I was lonely. There's no excuse. But it's done. I said nothing, letting the silence fill the line. Letting him feel the weight of my hatred. Finally, he cleared his throat. If there's anything you need, financial help, I don't know. I just want to make amends. I nearly choked on my own fury. Amends. Do you think a check will fix my marriage? He hesitated, then exhaled. No. But I want to. I don't want a lawsuit or public scandal. My firm can't have that. My anger crystallized into a cold, deadly focus. I see. So this is about your reputation. You're worried about your precious name in the papers. He didn't respond. That was enough of an answer. I spoke quietly. We're done here, James. Then I hung up before he could say more. My heart was pounding. My body shook. The nerve of him, to call and try to buy off my silence. I felt a flush of shame and wrath. This was the kind of man my wife risked everything for. That evening, I left my phone on the kitchen table, ignoring its constant vibrations. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window. The new sign outside still read, "No forgiveness." The photo of them was pinned to the fridge. I wanted them both to see how I was living. The betrayal laid bare, my refusal to hide the evidence. Days turned into weeks. The leaves outside turned orange and brown, swirling through the chilly wind. I sank deeper into a solitary rhythm. I still had my job, worked from home mostly. I still ran every morning, punishing my body so I'd feel something besides heartbreak. My knee howled, but I refused to stop. With each step, I whispered her name in my mind, forcing myself to remember how she'd destroyed us. Laura began leaving voicemails that sounded more broken each time. She admitted everything, told me she'd confessed to some close friend, that she regretted it more than anything. She wanted one more chance. She needed me. She loved me. But her love had turned toxic the moment she let James Roberts into my bed. So I let her stew in her loneliness. I changed the lock on the house but kept my phone number the same, a cruel little gesture that made sure she could see I wasn't hiding. I wanted her to witness my progress, my steady survival without her. Eventually, guilt mingled with anger, swirling into a new sense of self. I realized I was stronger than I'd ever been. She had broken me, but that break was forging a sharper, tougher version of who I used to be. One cold morning, I sat in the living room with my coffee, staring at the new door lock from across the hall. My phone lay silent for once. No calls, no texts. Outside, the sky was a sheet of silver. I took a sip of coffee, bitter, lukewarm, and I realized it tasted like freedom. She knocked around noon, that same day. Soft at first, then louder. I recognized her pattern. Something in me stirred, a dull pang of pity or maybe leftover affection. But I didn't move, didn't answer. She stood there for a few minutes, rattling the handle. Then she slid something under the door, a folded piece of paper. Her footsteps receded. When I was sure she was gone, I opened the door a crack and picked it up. It was a letter, scrawled in her neat, slanted handwriting. She wrote about her despair, her remorse, how she couldn't sleep at night, how she'd had that stupid star tattoo covered up, now just a black swirl, no more star. Reading it left me numb. I crushed the paper in my hand, tossed it into the trash. That was that. I started sleeping better after that day, ironically. Something about her desperation told me she was facing the full consequences of what she'd done. I wasn't going to rescue her from it. Not this time. The final confrontation between us happened a few days later. She somehow slipped in behind a delivery driver carrying a package. I heard muffled voices at the door. Then the driver left, and she was inside, calling my name, bag slung over her shoulder. I walked out of my office, slow and deliberate. "What are you doing here?" She lowered her head. "I needed to see you in person. You won't answer my calls." I nodded, crossing my arms. "So you decided to sneak in." She set her bag down carefully. "I'm sorry. I missed you. God, David, I hate myself for what I've done." I studied her face. Tired, hollow. The star tattoo was indeed altered, now a shapeless blot under her sweater strap. But I could still see its outline, a reminder of the night she changed everything. "Please," she begged. "Let's at least talk. Let me explain." I cocked my head. "Explain? Sure." Her shoulders relaxed a fraction, as if she thought she had a chance. "I was lonely," she said, voice trembling. "We fell into this rut. You were always busy. I felt overlooked. James gave me attention, made me feel desired." I stared at her. "And so you decided to let him tear apart our marriage." Her eyes welled with tears. "It was just one time. One terrible, stupid time. It only takes once to burn a house down," I said softly. She swallowed. "Is there any chance we can fix this?" I looked away, out the window where leaves swirled in a sudden gust of wind. The afternoon sun flickered behind a passing cloud. "No." She let out a ragged sob, hugging herself. "Don't say that. I'll do anything." I took a step closer, my knee protesting. The pain was there, a companion that reminded me I was alive. "You want me to forget how you laid with him right here in our bed? How his sweat stank on my pillow?" She flinched, tears pouring down her face. I continued, quietly. "You betrayed me in the worst possible way. You stepped on our vows, on everything we built. And you want me to wave a magic wand and pretend." She shook her head desperately. "No, but maybe we can rebuild." "Rebuild on top of ashes. I'll wait as long as it takes," she whispered. "Just, please don't shut me out forever." I exhaled, feeling the tension in every muscle. A memory flashed. The day we were married, how radiant she'd looked. Then the memory twisted into the image of her, with him, tangled in sweaty sheets. My lips curled in a bitter imitation of a smile. "Get out," I said. She stared, as if unsure she heard me. "Get out," I repeated, voice stronger. "I don't want to see you. I don't want you in this house." Fresh sobs racked her. She stooped to pick up her bag, shoulders shaking. She was about to protest again, but when she saw my face, she realized there was no point. With a final, heartbroken look, she turned and left. The door clicked shut behind her, the last echo of a life we once shared. That evening, I poured myself a stiff drink, ignoring the guilt that nagged at the back of my brain. I wasn't the one who destroyed our marriage. That was all on her. If she wanted to blame me for being distant, fine, but it didn't excuse her choice. I sipped the drink slowly, the burn of whiskey settling in my chest. My phone buzzed with a text. My father, asking if I was okay. I realized I hadn't told him or my mother anything yet. Another wave of anger and sadness rose, but I'd handle that later. For now, I needed to breathe in this cold new reality. In the days that followed, I changed the decor in the bedroom, replaced the sheets, moved furniture around. It felt like exorcising demons. I vacuumed every inch, wiped down the surfaces, opened the windows to let in fresh air. No trace of her, no trace of him. I didn't even want the faint memory of that sweaty stench lingering. Then I settled into an odd peace. The heartbreak was still there, but it was overshadowed by my desire to heal. Mornings, I kept running, pounding my knee. Each mile was an exorcism of what I used to feel for her. I gave up counting them. I just ran until the fury turned into exhaustion, and then I walked home, limping but calmer. Eventually, she stopped coming around. Maybe she realized it was futile. Maybe she saw that I'd become someone else, someone who refused to be a victim. I learned from a mutual friend that James's wife had found out that there was a huge blow-up in his household, too. Good, I thought. Let him feel the consequences. One crisp, clear morning, weeks after the final confrontation, I woke up with no sense of dread for the first time. The sun was bright, a slight chill in the air. I dressed for my run. Before heading out, I paused at the front door. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye. I looked tired, but there was a steadiness in my gaze I hadn't seen in a long time. A new resolve. Locking the door behind me, I started an easy jog. My knee twinged, but I welcomed it. The first mile was dedicated to the memory of her. The second mile, to the memory of us. By the third, I found a strange sort of release. In the rhythmic pounding of my steps, I tasted freedom on the cold morning air. I thought about the man I used to be, eager to please, worried about making mistakes, ignorant of the betrayal building under my nose. He died the night I smelled a stranger's sweat in my own bed. But in his place was someone sharper, stronger, ready to face whatever came next. That's the irony. She and her lover had shattered me, and those cracks only forged a harder, tougher steel. I ran faster, ignoring the pulse of pain in my knee, feeling the winter wind bite my cheeks. There was a clarity in each breath, each footfall. My lungs burned, but it was a good burn. I was alive. I slowed only when I reached the final stretch near my house. Stopping by the mailbox, I wiped sweat from my brow. My breath ragged in the cold air. The sun hummed low, gilding the neighborhood rooftops in pale light. I leaned against the mailbox, letting my heartbeat settle. A question rose unbidden. If she hadn't worn that red dress that night, would things be different? Would I still be stumbling around in ignorance, trying to make a broken marriage work? Maybe. Or maybe she'd have found another dress, another way. That was the old me, always second-guessing, always denying the obvious. Not anymore. I looked at the new lock on my front door, at the sign still pinned to the inside window. No forgiveness, and I felt no regrets. Because, for the first time in a long while, my mind was clear of illusions. My heart was battered but beating strong. I limped up the steps, inhaled the cool air, and stepped into my house. My house. Knowing I was done living in her shadow. And that was enough.